Mr. Speaker, in reality, the one big political question, the real question, was how today's plan would be paid for and who would pay for it. And ever since the new Prime Minister took office, we've been waiting for these answers. But after all the waiting, it couldn't be any clearer. She set it out very brazenly. The Prime Minister's plan means that the public pays. She has made the political choice to tax families instead of companies, to put profit over people. Instead of a windfall tax, she's chosen a new Tory tax, the Truss tax. The Truss tax that means that in the months and years ahead, households and businesses will be punished with higher bills, higher interest rates and higher mortgage costs. A Truss tax means it cuts to the vital public services people rely on and which are used to support the most vulnerable. A Truss tax means a threat to the Scottish budget, which the Scottish Government is using to protect our population and shield workers and public services as best they can. Mr. Speaker, the frightening bit for people is that the new Prime Minister made this choice on day one in the job. Because on day one, we saw the pound slip to a low not seen since the Thatcher years, knocked by the UK's worsening economic outlook. On day one, her first major decision as Prime Minister will see big business profits prioritised over family budgets. And on day one, we can already predict that the Truss tax, paid for by households for the years to come, will be the Prime Minister's enduring legacy, eating away at household budgets long after she and her party have been voted out of office. If day one was that bad, you couldn't blame people for fearing that the worst is yet to come. Mr. Speaker, the decision not to bring in an additional windfall tax is the biggest and the worst political choice in this plan. Because let's look at Shell and BP as an example. Now, I want corporates to be able to be profitable to invest, to create jobs and to finance a green transition. But there is a difference between a fair profit and an excess windfall or excess profit. Mr. Speaker, Shell's first-half profits were up by 177% to $25.2 billion. Shell were making excess profits to such an extent they brought back shares worth $8.5 billion and declared that they would buy back a further $6 billion worth of shares between July and September. If you want the example of where the excess profit is, Mr. Speaker, then there it is. In total, this means that $14.5 billion of excess profits not being invested in green energy projects, money that's been generated from high energy prices, that our constituents and our businesses have to pay. That is the reality. Then let's take a look at British Petroleum. Quarter two profits up from $3.1 billion to $9.2 billion, and a share buyback for this quarter of $3.5 billion. You know, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, that will disgust our constituents, that money has been given back to shareholders at a time that people quite simply can't afford to put their heating on. These are global corporates, but we can and should fairly tax their UK activities. So why on earth is the Prime Minister failing to bring in a fair windfall tax? Why are ordinary people right across these islands ultimately going to have to foot these bills? Why does her plan not address that real issue? Mr. Speaker, this energy plan is not only defined by the choice it makes to make the public pay instead of the excess profits of massive corporations. It is also defined by its glaring omissions. Because there is no proper plan to help those that are already struggling. Support needs to be targeted to low-income households and those negatively impacted by spiralling costs, such as unpaid carers, larger households and disabled people. In Scotland, we are already prioritising this support to the most vulnerable. The Scottish Government is doing what it can, freezing rents, banning evictions, freezing train fares, expanding free school meals to primary 6 and primary 7. That's a government acting with compassion.